Hey everyone, Ben Cooper Radio, episode number 290. Christmas is upon us. Well, that would be pretty unrelevant statement if you're listening to this show in like February 2018. But either way, we're recording it in the present, in December, and it's nearly Christmas. And I'm very excited because I think Christmas gives you a great time to reflect and think about things. And I think for me, it's the one time of the year where like the world turns off. Like people ignore their phones, it's friends, it's family. You literally don't have to work, you don't have to do anything. And I think it's one of those genuinely mentally freeing periods of time. And I think maybe that makes you think, if you really enjoy that, which I do, how do you create more of that in your life? Like, do we have enough balance away from technology and all the stuff that, you know, requires our time? Don't get me wrong, we want to be engaged, we want to enjoy things, but there needs to be time where we say, right, no, you know, I'm away from my phone for an hour, that kind of stuff, to actually get that form of mental rest. I think that's really important. But I'm looking forward to Christmas. I know Tom's looking forward to Christmas.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Christmas. I don't know how much of that sort of anti-technology things just because you've just broken your laptop and you're really annoyed at technology at the minute. But
yeah, I'm really annoyed.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Christmas. I think it's, as you say, it's nice to have that almost like week to 2 weeks, depending on how your holidays fall, gap where you are just able to do what you want to do. You can relax, you can spend some time reading, you can spend time with loved ones, and there's no urgent stuff that you have to do other than cooking a Christmas dinner, which is not a bad thing. So I don't know whether it would be useful for people to sort of take maybe even just a few days during the year here and there out. Like I know that you do, where you do like a technology detox and just try to relive this amazing part of the year more than once.
Yeah. Well, I think also if it's like on holiday, the amount of people that go on holiday but then don't actually switch off on holiday. Like the amount of people I've been messaging and they've been like, oh yeah, I'm on the beach in like so-and-so. And I'm like, why are you on Facebook Messenger? Like go and do some fun stuff. Like get off your phone, like do something. I don't get it. No,
I mean, God, people can relax in however way they want. It's just not the way I would choose to do it.
No, me neither. Anyway, yeah. Cool. Well, we've got a load of questions for this show, as usual. I don't actually know what will happen next week because I've currently lost my laptop, as in it's dead, and all my future podcast recordings were on that laptop. So at the moment, I think the phrase most people would use is, I'm fucked. Whether I will be fucked next week, I really don't know, but it's not good. Updates our end, well, it's Christmas. Fat Loss for Life is starting again in January. Our new powdered, very, very scientifically driven pre-workout should be available now at awesomesupplements.co.uk, so I would have a check of that out. The little bottled shots are gone, and we've gone into a powdered version because we're now able to do what we want to do. So I would go and check that out because I think it's pretty damn cool. Otherwise, Thomas, question time.
Question time. So this first one's not really a question, but I know that you had some comments on it, so we've included it. So, hi Ben. I'd like to start by saying I love your show and it makes my half an hour walk to school every day very enjoyable. I'm currently at drama school. It's an intense 9 to 6, 5 days a week, often with after school commitments and rehearsals. However, my other passion is fitness. I love it and I've been a solid 5 to 6 days a week gym girl for a few years now. I originally got into it purely focusing on helping myself achieve a nice body, but now I'm interested in every aspect, including the science of training and nutrition, and I'm now wanting to help others. I've enrolled in a PT course that I'm extremely excited about this summer and can't wait to be qualified. However, because of my school day, I can only fit in a 6-week intense course over the summer period. I know that in the past you have mentioned that this is not ideal. I want so desperately to help others fall in love with health and fitness, mainly improve body confidence and balance in women. Thanks, Georgina.
The reason why I picked this up is it was obviously a very, very similar story to myself getting into the industry. So I was, you know, focusing on my acting career. That was my primary career path before I got into fitness and nutrition, and it made me sidestep away from acting and go fully all into the fitness thing. So I think amazing, Georgina, amazing what you plan to do. I think why I picked this up is I want to look at potentially the mindset and the way that people approach things. So in general, I think a 6-week intensive course looking at, you know, mastering nutrition is not brilliant. Like, how much hands-on time are you going to get? How much are you fully going to learn about actually coaching other people, the behavioral economics of coaching other people? It's going to be limited. Now, for example, I find I'm quite an intuitive person. I really enjoy like being hands-on. I learn very well from environments. If you have a certain learning style that could work in a particular environment, so if you think you can go into a 6-week course and come out the other end being a great practitioner, but know that you've still got a lot to learn, then actually a 6-week course is absolutely fine, because you're going to know what you need to do your job. But if you know that potentially you're a bit of a slow learner, you like to learn by doing, it takes a long time to sink in, some of the theory side that you maybe struggle with, or you're maybe doing the 6-week course because you want a shortcut to it. You know, you want to get into the industry as quickly as possible. You want to start coaching. Like anything in life, it's how you approach things. What mindset are you going into it with? What learning style do you have? So I'm not particularly for or against. I'm probably more against a 6-week course than other styles of course. Like, can you take 3, 4, 5, 6 months to really master personal training? If you can, then I would do that. Otherwise, I think it's a case that, you know, you need to find what can potentially work for you with the right kind of training provider. And I think the training provider is actually really important. Like, we look at university courses, we look at short courses, we get online courses, we can look at podcasts. What people do you resonate with? Do you resonate with this podcast? Okay, why is that? Why does my voice and approach resonate with you? There might be a certain course at a university, like what do they cover on a syllabus? You might have exposure of a certain tutor as part of a training provider. Awesome. Well, why is that tutor potentially good for you? And regardless of the company and the cost of the course, perhaps that's the best training provider for you to go with, because you can really resonate with that individual. Because ultimately, a great tutor can be part of any training provider. So how you're going to learn, what you're going to learn, the mindset you go into it will really dictate the outcome.
Definitely. One thing that's really sort of useful to bear in mind as well is that level 3 PT courses often are quite short. I don't know what the national average is or like what the standard is, but I do know there are a lot of like 12-day courses. So that will be either an intensive 6-week program, an intensive 2-week program I've seen where you do every weekend for 6 weeks. I've seen one Saturday every 12 weeks. And it's, as you say, there's very little that you can actually take from that course if you take that as the only point of learning. What I'd probably recommend is, if you've only got this 6-week intensive program, use that primarily to gain some knowledge, but mostly just to get the qualification. And outside of that, make sure that you're filling in any blanks that you feel your knowledge is going to have after the course is finished. Because, again, it depends on the learning provider. There are some phenomenal ones out there for whom this might not actually apply, what I'm saying here. But on average, a level 3 PT course will leave you somewhat unprepared for the industry. And so it's useful to make sure that you bear in mind you need to know communication skills, how to program for the general public. Like, how can you set up a gym program that Joe Blogs that just works in Tesco is going to want to stick to, even though they're not necessarily as into fitness as you are. And on top of that, it's a good idea to make sure that you know as much as possible about just coaching movement. They're the 3 things that I think are key, and they're not taught enough on personal training courses in general, especially perhaps these intensive ones.
Nice. Right. Next question.
Sweet. So this was a bit of a nutritional one. Hi Ben, is there any benefit to making your meals for the day even from a caloric perspective? I understand MPS is best if protein is spread and metabolism is more regulated by total daily intake versus having frequent feed-ins. I think he means there weight loss and gain is regulated. But is there any advantage for body composition, energy, nutrient absorption and or digestion if we make all meals about the same calorie load? Or would one huge meal, one medium and one small be just the same? Thanks Ben, love the show, Cody.
I think Tom will definitely correct me here if any of my thought processes are wrong, but you know, the first thing we're looking at here is protein. So ideally from a general body composition perspective, protein wants to be evenly split throughout the day where possible. So we take our total protein need for the day, let's just say that's 120 grams, and we're eating 4 times a day, so we're aiming for 30 grams of protein at each meal. Now, a meal can be big and have 30 grams of protein in it, or it can be small and have 30 grams of protein in it. So if we have a massive breakfast and it has 30 grams of protein in it, cool. If we have a massive dinner, cool. We could have a breakfast that might just literally be a whey protein shake and that's it. But again, we're getting that muscle protein synthesis effect. Now, in terms of obviously controlling body composition, we've then got a calorie factor on top of that. So we want to be controlling calories throughout the course of the day, whatever your method or system is. And then after that, we want to also have a certain amount of timing that makes us feel good. So, all your meals, if you eat too small, do you maybe get too hungry too quickly? I know that sounds a little bit silly, but there's people that do match certain feeding environments. Like, I quite like sort of big feeds, don't eat for a while. I'm not really a massive fan of grazing unless I graze from early on in the day. So I'm more than happy to eat small meals, but I have to start my day like that. If I eat a big meal in the morning, I kind of almost want to carry on eating big all day. I swear part of that is because it stretches my stomach, and my stomach almost has this like short-term elastic memory of like, yeah, that thing you did at breakfast, can we do that again because it was really enjoyable and you got to eat lots. So psychologically there's also a component there. So psychologically I'm almost setting myself up for failure by having a massive breakfast, because what's the chances I can eat big all the time and maintain my weight? It might be a little bit difficult unless I'm really kind of controlling the meals. But from a metabolism perspective, if you eat a big meal, your metabolic rate will elevate greater than it would on a smaller meal, because your body basically just has more to deal with. So it's upregulating its ability to handle and process and digest that food. So there's several components here. Yes, muscle protein synthesis and the amount of protein is absolutely key, and you want it to be even. You then need to try and make things like match your lifestyle and what it is that you enjoy about food. And then make sure you're kind of controlling the variables to actually make sure that you get the outcome that you want from your nutritional regime.
Sweet. Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it there. I mean, whenever we talk about nutrition in terms of, is this a good idea, is this a bad idea, it's a good idea to set a baseline understanding of what goals are we aiming for in this situation. So if, for example, your goal is to gain muscle at the minute, then the most important thing for you would be to maximize that muscle protein synthesis throughout the day, as you suggested. To do that, it's usually somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 grams of leucine per meal, which, as Ben says, it's going to be somewhere between like 30 and 40 grams of protein at a sitting. You want to do that maybe 4 or 5 times a day. And as Ben says, that could equate to an enormous 2,000 calorie meal with all the trimmings, or it could be a whey protein shake in water. So the size of the meal isn't necessarily relative to the size of the protein hit that you're going to get. But when it comes to fat loss, even there, that's not as important. So if you are someone who is trying to lose fat and you're thinking that eating a very small meal throughout the day is going to make it a little bit easier for you to stick to that calorie deficit, then provided your total protein intake is adequate, then eating one huge meal, one medium meal, and one tiny meal, and not even necessarily worrying about the protein intake of that tiny meal would be fine. However, as Ben said, you've got to look at appetite and things like that. So if you're eating a lower protein meal, we do know that protein's the most satiating macronutrient. So it wouldn't necessarily be a good idea to sort of avoid the protein there. The other thing, if your goal at the minute is to sort of maximize sports performance, or even if that's just something that you consider to be important to yourself, then you might be selling yourself short if you're under-fueling performance prior to a workout in any capacity, whatever that means for you. So if you're eating a small breakfast, a relatively small lunch, and then training in the gym at 5 p.m. when you finish work, you might not have the performance capacity there as you would have done if you'd eaten a little bit more before you train. As always, there's going to be some individual variation there, so it might not necessarily be for you. I know a lot of people do train fasted in the evening, which I could never do, but some people will not eat, train at 5 p.m. and train fine. that's okay, but it's not something that most people can do, and it's something that you need to consider. So if you're hitting the gym, you get sort of 3/4 of the way into your workout and you find that you're flagging and you haven't eaten a lot of food throughout the day prior to that session, it might be worth looking at your approach. But realistically, for sort of body, well, pretty much for everything that you suggested there, so for body composition, energy, which is going to be individually sort of regulated, nutrient absorption, it's not going to be affected, because ultimately your body just slows down digestion to make sure that it can absorb all of the nutrients that you put in it. Your body is incredibly efficient. If it wasn't, we probably wouldn't be the dominant species on the planet right now, because back in the day when we were caveman and that, there was a good chance that you would be eating 1 or 2 large meals and then grazing for the rest of the week because food wasn't all that abundant. So if we weren't able to absorb all the nutrients from big feedings, we'd be in a lot of trouble. And then digestion, again, that's pretty much going to be individual. Unless you've got some significant sort of intestinal issues, you shouldn't have any problems eating large meals. So the only thing there will be body composition, and as long as your protein and your calories are set, you should be fine.
Sweet!
So, last question.
Why, aye?
So, hi Ben and Tom, hope all is well and thanks for all the podcasts to date. I've now listened to all of them and enjoying them a lot. I was listening to Lane Norton's Physique Science Radio episode 29 with Brad Schoenfeld, where they discussed the impact of a person's genetics on response to training stimulus, citing studies where participants undertook the same training program with dramatic differences in results. The study concluded that people with exceptional genetics gained exceptional amounts of strength and hypertrophy, while some people barely improved and could be considered to be non-responders to exercise. My question is, so, if one suspects they have poor genetics, how would you program their weightlifting with primarily hypertrophy goals? Just as a side note, this isn't a question about managing being a hard gainer per se. In my case, I gain weight fairly easily, 15 kilograms in the last 2 years, some of muscle, but not all of it. Vital stats. 24 years old, 80 kilograms in weight, 5'11" in height, waist 33 to 34 inches, training since 19. Best lifts, bench press 80 kilos for 1 rep, deadlifts 100 for 4 reps, squat 70 for 1 rep. Current split, 5 days a week training and 2 rest. 4 days per week does legs, push, pull, arms, and then cycles the next one. Cycles about 20 miles a week. Thanks, Max.
So this is a great topic, and I don't actually believe, and Tom might correct me, that anything should really change based on someone's genetic potential, because really training should always be tweaked on the potential outcome that you're getting from your current training. So, you know, for example, everyone has a slight different sway in terms of their muscle fiber type. So if you have short, more slow twitch muscle fibers, the chances are that you might respond more to kind of a bit more higher rep training, and vice versa. So but either way, you want to be listening to your body, and you want to be going through training cycles that pushes for different adaptations within your physiology. So you might go through a strength training block, then you might go through a hypertrophy block, then you might do some strength training with a little bit of conditioning to improve your strength and your work capacity. You might then go back into a hypertrophy block, and you're always trying to stimulate the body to say, do you know what? This is an unknown level of fitness. This is an unknown stimulus to us. Let's grow and let's push. Unfortunately, there is a genetic component, and I 100% believe that some people build muscle brilliantly and some not so much. I can look at it in my rugby team, for example, the amount of guys that have got into the gym, lifted a couple of weights, boom, and other guys where they've, really slogged away at it and they've got, just minimal gain. So I don't think the approach needs to specifically train. I think just from what you've told me so far with your training, I think you could go through a nice period of strength training. I think for your height and your weight, I'd like to see your actual total scores being higher. And I'm not a big fan of looking at scores like, oh, this is my 1 rep max, because I'm not that bothered at it. But just looking at what you're trying to achieve and your statistics, I think you should be lifting heavier in the deadlift. I think you should be benching more. Again, your squat, I think you should be stronger. So actually, I'd come away from your current training split that was very hypertrophy focused and go through maybe 2 to 3 months of strength training, then drop back into the hypertrophy for 4 to 8 weeks, and again those cycles continue, which you'll see in any traditional S&C type training program. We go through these periods of shifting from one side to the other to kind of essentially maximize our genetic potential and our physiology.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think one of the things that we do need to look at when we're talking about genetics and human potential is that a lot of these things fall in like a normal distribution. So most people fall pretty damn close to the mean, and then you've got a few outliers that will either perform incredibly well or perform incredibly poorly. So most of us are going to be pretty average. Then you've got the odd freak that's going to end up playing rugby for England, or is going to end up on the Mr. Olympia stage. And then you've got the people down at the bottom end who unfortunately will struggle to put on muscle. Generally speaking, though, you've got to consider as well that most of the time with this normal distribution, you'll fall on different distributions for different attributes. So if you are, for argument's sake, someone who does have a poor muscle gain and potential, you might find success in other sports. You might be a great endurance runner. You might be a great swimmer. So it's not so much that you're just terrible at or great at all sporting performance. These things fall into like specific training modalities. But it is important to say that, yeah, there is a genetic component to this. And I think one of the big things from the small amount of research that I've looked at is to do with satellite cell density. So within your muscles, you've got these things called satellite cells, which, for want of a better way of explaining it without going on for ages, is you've got these little things that will float around near your muscle cells. And when you get a stimulus for growth, they will be able to enter your muscle cells and add new nuclei. And that will allow these muscles to grow. Now, some people will have more of those than others will, and that generally predicts the amount of muscle that you build from a given stimulus. Of course, as you mentioned, you've got the differences in muscle fiber types, which is going to play a role as well. But these satellite cells might be a big factor in that. And yeah, they're genetically determined. Of course, if you've trained for a really long time, then you'll have more satellite cells than other people will. So if you then detrain and come back to the gym, you get that thing called muscle memory, which is always really good. And you do see that in people who've used anabolic steroids, for example, they'll have more satellite cells than people who haven't used steroids, even when they stop using them, provided they've been using them for quite a long time. So these things are somewhat malleable, but generally speaking, it's a genetically determined thing, and we can't really do anything about it, but it will impact your ability to gain muscle. Now, with all of that being said, there are still some things that do jump out in this question that I would like to sort of highlight. So first of all, with your training, you've got 1 day per week dedicated to arms. And I think if you're in a situation that you are where you're concerned about the amount of muscle that you're being able to build, spending like 25% of your training time training 2 of the smallest muscle groups in your body, it's not the ideal situation. What I think I would rather see is if you were training on something more like an upper lower or even a full body program 3 times a week, because what that's going to do is it's going to mean that you're training all of the major muscle groups through all of the main movement patterns at least twice per week. And we know from the research that actually training a muscle more than once per week is far more effective than doing it only that one time. So if you can train something twice a week, you will grow faster and you'll grow more effectively.
One thing that I've definitely learned over the years is, and Tom's picked up on it in an inadvertent way, is that people that really struggle or feel they struggle to make true progress in their training, for me, have never really trained hard enough. And, you know, training hard isn't just about lying down on the bench press and trying to really squeeze out 90 kilo instead of 85 this week. It's about actually really forcing your body over time to handle not just greater volumes, but also repeated volumes. So for example, there's so many different ways to expose your muscle to a stimulus, but people's actual ability to handle stress and apply intensity to their body, for me, it's not that high in the general population. If I walk into my gym, which is just a normal commercial gym, one of the gyms I go to, I would describe not that many people in the gym as hard trainers, where I look at their training program and I was like, man, that dude fucking worked hard today. And that's the consensus. Like for me, 90% of people are working fairly hard. And this is where I like people using like heart rate monitoring straps, and actually going into different environments where they're forced to do different things to show themselves that actually the body is capable of really, really intense stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you need to go in the gym every day, every week, and actually smash your body, because I think that's a negative thing. I think you need to go through periods of hard training and then you back off, whether you periodize that within a week or you periodize that within a month. I think it needs to happen. But this is why I like disciplines quite often, like CrossFit, for example, where, people are going into the gym and the environment is, today, we're going to work hard. And people put in the work and you see it. They walk out of there going, that was a strong shift. That was a busy hour. I just don't see enough of that. And this is where I think I am a big fan of sport, and I'm a big fan of multi-discipline training models, because I don't believe the gym always provides this for people. Like, I don't believe you should just be strong in a deadlift and a squat. I want people to be have pretty decent work capacity. If I said, okay, let's do 2 minutes of burpees for time and then straight onto a rower, that people would have some level of athleticism to actually perform that task, rather than thinking, oh God, because I think it rounds out the body. It enables the body to know how to push and perform on a multitude of levels, rather than lying down on a bench and trying to push for 90 kilos for 8 reps.
The other thing that I'd say as well is that, alongside what you kind of mentioned about training hard, is that most people, I find, just don't. Now, training hard doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to push yourself to failure all the time. In fact, I generally recommend that you keep at least 1 rep in the tank on pretty much everything. I mean, yeah, if you are training arms or shoulders or calves or something, go to failure. It doesn't really matter. Probably the same for like leg extension, leg curl, any isolation movement. But if you're training a major muscle group, or even like a big accessory with something like, I don't know, pull downs, going all of the way to failure isn't necessarily a good idea. With that said, most people still don't train as hard as they probably could do. In fact, I read one study a couple of weeks ago. I wrote an email about this to the BTN email list, but by the time this podcast goes out, everyone's probably forgotten about it. And what they found was, when they took individuals who were recreational athletes, so kind of like myself, people who just train in the gym, but we're not professionals by any means, we're certainly not competitive, and they asked them to self-prescribe a weight to use for 10 reps. So if you were going to do bench press or whatever, what is the weight you do for 10? And then they had them go to failure with that weight. And what they found is that the individuals in the study did between 13 and 21 reps. 13 is probably about right. When you're hitting the 21 rep mark, that just kind of suggests that those people who, in my personal experience, are quite representative of the general gym-going public, just aren't lifting heavy enough. And I think what it comes down to is learning to brace and grind through hard reps, because a lot of people who think they're going to failure actually have 3-4 reps left if they were able to brace and grind. So if you've never had a coach, if you've never had any sort of experienced person watching over your training, I would probably pay a little bit of money and get a coach for a couple of weeks, just so someone can teach you how to do these lifts in a more effective, efficient manner, especially when things get quite hard. I still recommend leaving 1-2 reps in the tank on every exercise, but leaving 1 or 2 reps in the tank while training as hard as possible with proper technique allows you to do a lot more than leaving 1 or 2 reps in the tank, training perhaps with a little bit of inefficiency, perhaps you're not as tight as you could be, perhaps you're not bracing as hard, all of that sort of stuff. And then, of course, as a final point, you just need to make sure you're on a progressive program.
Yeah. That's a great little study that almost represents that. That's really nice. I like that. If, by the way, if people want to learn more off Tom, make sure you're following the Body Type Nutrition Facebook page. Make sure you go to bodytypenutrition.co.uk and sign up to our email list, because Tom puts a lot of educational material, research, snippets and reviews and stuff. So Tom's definitely putting some good geeky stuff out there. So make sure you're following those platforms to hear from Tom. Awesome, mate. Tom, that's us done.
Yeah, actually, I think that's probably the shortest podcast we've ever done.
Well, yeah, maybe for a while. I'm feeling quite succinct. I think it's because I'm coming up to Christmas. I'm trying to get my stuff boxed off. I'm trying to get everything in order. You've just been bragging that you're done for Christmas and you're off tomorrow. So, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I just think we probably got some good questions that let us answer them in a way where we didn't have to ramble on for ages and we could actually be coherent for once.
Yeah, well, hopefully we were coherent. You're always more coherent in your own head. Right, that's it. Me and Tom are out of here. Me and Tom will be on the podcast again soon. We will have a show, whatever it is, next Thursday, whatever situation my laptop is in, I will create some kind of show. Otherwise, have an incredible Christmas. Take some time off. Get focused for whatever 2018 is bringing. Get in touch with your goals. You know, use the time over Christmas to find that new training program, or to, you know, to really touch base with your nutrition and tie things up. One of the things that I'm actually doing over Christmas again, and I've gone through a few cycles of this, is mixing up my diet again. I wanna sort of find a couple of new recipes and a couple of different ways of doing things. And I've got 2 new cookbooks I want to have a look through and sort of find some nice stuff. Yeah, because like all of us, I just want to keep things interesting. Enables me to teach other people different techniques. So I will definitely be taking Christmas to get a bit reflective, but also enjoy myself and have plenty of food and good times.
Yeah, have a really good Christmas, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic time, and I'll speak to you in the new year.
Yes, right. That's it from me and Tom. If you've enjoyed this show, please share the love on social media. Help us spread this message. If you've never... If you've never left a review on iTunes, please do so. That helps the show grow. If you want to find more out about what we do as an education provider, then please go to bodytypenutrition.co.uk. If you want more about me and my links, go to bencoomer.com. And for all our information and supplemental needs, go to awesomesupplements.co.uk. Otherwise, have a great Christmas, stay awesome, and I will speak to you next Thursday. Goodbye. Hey everyone, Ben Coomer Radio, episode number 289. Now, this is the podcast's first ever 3-way.